If you're a smaller contractor and you don't know your numbers, you're in some real big trouble, my friend. If you thought 2024 was difficult, imagine how tough it's going to be if you don't plan for 2025. If you think your HVAC or plumbing company is perfect, think again. For every opportunity your home service company has, there is an equal threat that could come and knock you off the block. If you're not planning for 2025, I guarantee you're going to get your ass kicked by the people who are. You've probably heard the term aim small, miss small. Well, guess what? That applies to your marketing too. To quote Benjamin Franklin, HVAC companies, those who fail to plan to fail. Hello, friends. I'm Adam Loveridge. Welcome to the Home Services Marketing Podcast, Growth to Acquisition. I'm the owner and founder of Job Calls. We're a home services marketing agency specializing in heating, air conditioning, plumbing, and remodeling contractors. For more information about Job Calls, visit us online at www.jobcalls.com. Hello, and welcome to the Home Services Marketing Podcast. My name is Adam Loveridge with Job Calls, and I'm really excited to be joining you here just before the holidays. It is currently December 17th, so Christmas is right around the corner here next week. And then right, of course, behind that is New Year's, right? And this is that time of year where, fortunately, I've got quite a bit of downtime because, let's be real, none of you want to talk to me right before the holidays. You're thinking about other things. And I really like that because it gives me this wonderful opportunity to sit down and really start putting together my planning for 2025. And so today, what I'm going to do is go through that process that I use and that I also take a lot of my clients through to really just kind of look at what we did in terms of 2024, right? A recap of our year. How were we profitability wise? How were we growth wise? Did we meet or exceed our goals? Did we underperform? Those sorts of things. And then once we've gathered all of that information, we can start to really see those trends and really start to map out the most effective year that we can have for the next year. So without further ado, let's go ahead and start talking about kind of what that looks like. So the process that we're going to go through is really about a 7-step process. And I'm going to describe what that is here initially today. If you'd like to join me to follow through this process, I'm going to be hosting a 2025 planning workshop on January 15th. That's going to be at 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific. And we're going to go further in depth, especially on the marketing and lead generation side of this planning process. In that, I'm going to be sharing some tools that we use to help plan out our clients' marketing for the coming year. So again, that's going to be January 15th. But without further ado, let me go ahead and start jumping in. So the first thing that we really want to do is look at our overall year in review, okay? And the metrics that I really like to start with, of course, is really the financial aspect of that and looking at our overall profitability review. So number one then is looking at that profit and loss statement, right? Your P&L. What I want to do is really compare my year over year revenue, expenses, and profit, right? Actually understand what that profit margin is. And then what I'm also trying to really take a look at as I'm going through that financial review is, number one, did we hit our goals from last year? Did we exceed our goals? Did we underperform, right? Why did that happen maybe? And we'll start to understand this as we start to dive down into more of the key metrics, those key performance indicators or KPIs. It's a good idea to just start to look at, how did we do overall? Okay. And then once we've taken a look at the P&L, I like to take that even further and really look at my cash flow statement, right? Now, hopefully you have a cash flow statement, but if not, you can always just go pull up your bank statements and frankly look at how does our financial management perform over the month, right? Or what's consistent cash flow look like for us, obviously. So in HVAC as an example, we all know that you're going to have a massive summer, a slow fall, pretty good winter, and a slow spring, right? But looking at those trends seasonally is one part of that process. But, as you're reviewing this P&L, is there something that happened or any other external things that may have thrown off those numbers for 2024? And so that's really just a great place to start. That cash flow analysis is really just going to be that review of what our cash flow trends look like. And then we're also trying to make sure And the reason that we're doing this in the first place is so that we can plan for those seasonal downturns, right? So that we know, okay, hey, we need this much money to pay all of our guys, to keep the marketing wheels turning, to keep the lights on, all of that kind of fun stuff. And so in those real bumper times, when we're doing incredibly well during the summer, it's a good idea then to start setting aside money that we know we're going to need during those times when we're probably running a little bit upside down, from a cash flow perspective. So that cash flow statement and really understanding your cash flow is going to be absolutely crucial to make sure that you don't have these things that come up that are going to absolutely sidewind you or potentially imperil your business. So the next thing I really like to do then, we were still talking about financial statements as a balance sheet review, assessing, did we retain any further earnings this year? Did we buy new trucks, right? Did we take on new debt? And have we increased our equity really over the year? And the big thing that I'm really looking for when it comes to that balance sheet review is just making sure that that debt, if we did accumulate any debt, that it's manageable, right? And that we have a plan in terms of how we're going to keep those debt levels low. And I really, really like the book Profit First. I think it's Mike Michalowicz. I hope I've said his name right. If not, forgive me, Mike. But it's a fantastic way to make sure that you're taking that profit first, that you're setting that aside, that you're planning on your tax liabilities, that you're setting all of that aside. And it just is a very, very easy bucket system, if you will, with savings accounts to help to make sure that we're accounting for those things, right? So if we know, hey, we've got this seasonal downturn twice a year and we can pretty much plan on it, then one thing that I might want to do in that profit first dynamic is make sure that I have an account that is my wages account for our seasonal downturns, right? So that way I've got that money already set aside. And it's really just a very easy, practical thing to look at there. So another thing that I'm going to review is the budget versus actual, right? So we're going to compare our actual financial results to the budget that we set up, hopefully, right, in 2024. And hopefully you're using a budget. And if not, this is a great time then for the first time, hopefully not, but still the same. It's a great time for the first time to actually establish a budget so that here's these expenses that are going to come up. We know what's going to happen, and we have a game plan in place. Last thing we really want to look at then is kind of our profitability assessment overall, right? We're looking at our profit margins per service. We're looking at the actual profit margins for products that we've installed, that sort of thing. And really what we want to try to do with that is we want to figure out which of our services are higher earners, okay? And it's not always what you think. So I'll come back to air conditioning here for a second. In AC, you might sell a $7,000 system, but your technician can be out in 7 to 10 homes in a day at an average, service ticket of $750, right? And then the real question is, do we make more off of those 10 service calls in a day than we do installing a system? And so understanding those numbers is going to be really, really helpful. And then the last thing I really like from that profit first methodology is that I'm also accounting for my taxes that I'm going to have to pay on the profits for the company. And so I want to really look at, all right, I've got to start preparing for my annual tax returns, right? I want to make sure that I'm in compliance. I want to make sure that I've got all of my financial stuff ready to go so that I'm not postponing that tax return and whatever else, and can get that done very early on in the following year. So once we've gone through and looked at the profitability of the company, we've looked at all of those financial statements, we've got an idea of how we performed financially in the previous year and where we're trying to go here in the next year, then what we really want to do is start looking at our lead generation, right? This is the how of how we're going to get there. And I want you to think outside of the box here just a little bit when it comes to lead generation, because we're not just talking about leads that we paid for, leads that come from our SEO, leads that come from ads, that sort of thing. But really overall, how do we get business day in and day out, right? So that's going to include customer referrals. It's going to include any strategic alliances that we have, right? Other businesses that are consistently sending work our way. So I know this happens quite a bit in plumbing, where a one-man truck, two-man truck operation will have more volume than they're able to do. And so they'll oftentimes kick that volume over to other companies. So it really makes sense to continue to network with other plumbers, other HVAC contractors, other remodelers, because you can pass business back and forth. But those are some of the things that you really want to take a look at. And so ideally, you're tracking your marketing, you're tracking every single campaign that you're running. And if not, we can certainly help out with that through the job call CRM that will literally track every campaign over phone as well as form fills, that sort of thing. But having a good idea overall of where your leads came from in the previous year is absolutely paramount. And then the next real key metric that you want to understand is your cost per lead, right? So how much did it cost me with Google Ads to generate a lead? How much did it cost me with LSA to generate a lead? How much were my SEO leads, right? And then understanding beyond that, really what those percentages are, right? So what type of return on investment did I get from SEO? What type of return on investment did I get from referral generation, from the direct mailers that we send out to our clients, from our email campaigns, those sort of things. So once we've done that, then we really want to kind of look at the website itself, and do an SEO analysis of that. We've already kind of looked through all of our campaigns, determine our cost per leads, but there's been quite a few changes here in 2024 through mid 2023, at least, in that whole search landscape. And so one of the things that a lot of the contractors I'm talking to are noticing is that their performance of SEO has slowly died down over time. Okay. And so it's really, really a great idea at the very least to have a few audits done. Right. And so if you're looking at shopping around your search engine optimization, always a great plan, frankly, but get a couple people to run some audits for you and have them take a look and get a few expert opinions in that regard. Right. So we want to be looking at our rankings. We want to be looking at our organic traffic, and those can be found in Google Analytics and, of course, Google Search Console. And then last but not least, where all of us are local businesses, and we're serving customers within our service area, I want to be looking at my GBP performance. That's Google Business Profile. And you can always log in and see how many impressions you're getting, how many clicks you're getting, how many driving directions you're getting, how many calls you're getting from GBP. Now, if you're, of course, tracking those phone calls, you already know that anyway. But if you're not, Google's GBP performance data is going to show you what you were able to do. Now, this only goes back about 90 days, unless you're using a software that will actually database that information. So hopefully you have more than just 90 days of performance data to look at. But one way or another, that's also a really, really vital metric. We want to look at our content and social media, okay? And we want to really look at content consistency, quality, what our engagement metrics are, right? Reviewing growth of those social media platforms and really looking at the performance of them, right? So how much are people engaging with our Facebook account? How much are they engaging with our Instagram account? How much are they engaging with, TikTok or any other platforms that we're trying to get our message out there with? And engagement is more than just the metrics. It's really about how many conversations are we having? And more to the point, are those conversations turning into jobs? Now, the metric that I didn't talk about before that is really the most important and vital metric when it comes to your marketing, it's not actually cost per lead, it's cost per customer acquisition, or CAC. So we want to analyze that CAC and really start to spreadsheet out, if you will, all of those campaigns, what we realistically spent on them, what type of not only leads did we get from that, but how many of those leads converted into revenue, what the total revenue was from those campaigns, and then also what the total profitability was from those campaigns. And then once you've done that, now you can actually start to have this comprehensive view of what's actually working in your marketing, right? And I forget who made the quote, but it's like, I know that at least 2/3 of my marketing is working, but I have no idea what, right? And so, and I probably completely killed that quote, but you get the idea, right? If you can't track it, you can't measure it, and you never look at it, it's just a gut feeling, okay? And gut feelings are not the way to run a business. It's a system, it's a process. Last but not least, then, when it comes to my overall marketing review, I want to start setting goals then for the next year, right? I'll have my information on those campaigns that performed well. I'll know what my highest return on investment campaigns were. And that doesn't mean that I'm necessarily going to dump all of the campaigns that aren't working, but I might change ad budgets. Or I might consider letting a campaign go and trying out something new, right? A big trend that we're seeing, and this has been going on now for a few years, but I'm now starting to see, contractors in the home services space adopt this as CTV. And that's something that we're doing quite a bit of here as we're rolling into 2025 as well, because it's taking that broadcast media that has been so big for so many years for HVAC contractors, plumbing contractors, that sort of thing, and bringing it into the digital space where it's more easily trackable. After we do that marketing performance review, then we really want to kind of start taking an external focus as well as an internal focus here for a minute. And we want to put together a SWOT analysis. Okay. Now, if you're not familiar with what a SWOT analysis is, it's an acronym. It stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And this is something that I learned how to do in my bachelor's program for business. But the big thing that I want to be looking at first is the strengths of the company, right? What did my business do well this year? Where did we improve? Where were we able to gain a competitive advantage in our marketplace, right? And for that matter, what unique resources and competitive advantages do we have as a business? Okay. And think about this and put some time and energy into this, because this is that strategic planning stuff that's like, how important is it? But as an example, let's say that you don't have a $50,000 marketing budget that you can put in a monthly basis like your biggest competitors out there. How are you going to grab market share from those people, right? What strengths or unique positioning characteristics do you have that is going to put you above the rest of your competitors out there, right? And so for our smaller HVAC plumbing contractors, remodeling contractors, more often than not, it's going to be flexibility. It's going to be nimbleness, the ability to move and pivot and to change directions as needed. So once we've done our strengths, then we want to start really looking at our weaknesses. Okay, what areas do we need to improve? And my suggestion is you do this with a little bit of grace, frankly, because I think as entrepreneurs, a lot of us tend to fall into that perfectionistic side of things, right? And so for me, looking at our weaknesses and where we screwed up is always the easiest thing in the world to do. But you really want to try to take an unbiased look at, what areas need improvement in our business, okay? What internal challenges are we having that are impacting growth? Are we having problems hiring? Are we having a hard time staying competitive with our competitors' pricing, right? So these are some of the things that you really want to know is what are our weaknesses? Because the more we're aware of those weaknesses, the more we can pad against them and come up with solutions to really minimize those weaknesses. So next step in the SWOT analysis then is that O for opportunities. And are there any emerging trends, technologies, or markets that we should be exploring here in 2025? And can you expand services, products, or for that matter, partnerships out there? So spending some time to really map out what our opportunities are moving into the new year is a great way to know when we start to actually set that goal setting, what our initiatives need to be and when, right? What are our Q1 initiatives going to look like to start capitalizing on these opportunities? And then we're sitting down once a quarter and seeing how we're doing. And this is always a moving target. Okay. This is why I recommend doing this once a year, but then once a quarter, we're sitting down and we're looking at those KPIs. We're looking at our goals. We're seeing how we did, and then we're adjusting as needed. The last piece of this then is threats. Okay, and what external factors, whether it's the economy, right, or competition or regulations, the new Freon regulations are going to be a game changer in the HVAC space, right? And that's going to provide a whole bunch of new business at the expense of homeowners who are going to have to switch out these systems over time. So that's both a threat and an opportunity in the HVAC space in particular, right? And then the real question is when we look at those threats, how can we prepare to just mitigate these risks, right? How do we minimize our threats? How do we minimize our weaknesses? How do we expand on our strengths? And how do we expand on our opportunities? And that SWOT analysis is going to be the tool that will help you to really determine all of those. So once we've had the opportunity to put that SWOT analysis together, the next thing we really want to look at is an operations review. Okay. And I'm, so big on process, not always the best at creating it and managing it, but recognize how important it is for a business. Okay. And if I'm being real about it, the major difference between small, unprofitable companies and large profitable companies has everything to do with process. Okay. Big companies that follow a process are constantly working on process improvement. Just make sure that they're not repeating the same mistakes over and over and over again. But that happens in small business that doesn't have a process. So looking at our process efficiency, reviewing our workflows, right? Identifying inefficiencies. And moreover, nowadays, especially with AI, right, are there manual processes that could be automated? So that's not going to be the case when we go out in the field and things along those lines, but there's always opportunities to improve process. We also want to take time and really look at our team, look at staffing, and have an idea, okay, based on the growth that we want to achieve, how many more trucks are we going to have to add to the road? Are we having problems hiring right now anyway? What are ways that we could start to look at our operational perspective when it comes to hiring, when it comes to staffing, to be more competitive there? As an example to that, I did an interview a few weeks back with a plumber here in Utah that was saying that he loves what's happening in the mergers and acquisitions space, because once a company, a big plumbing company, big HVAC company gets acquired, he's able to go in and start stealing their guys, right? And so it's a great strategy because people want to work for, they want to have a connection with the business owner, I think, in so many cases. And so that could be another, frankly, competitive advantage when it comes to you and where you are, is that, if you're not a 100, 200, 300 truck outfit, but you're looking to make a dent in the world, most plumbers, most HVAC guys would rather work with those smaller companies. That's not always true, but that is definitely a competitive advantage. We want to look at technology. We want to be looking at our tools, right? What software could help automate a lot of our processes? How can we improve our performance using technology? And we want to really identify any upgrades that we need to make in our technology, where we could potentially integrate softwares together, where we can reduce redundancies in all of that. And then I would say really the last thing from our operations review is looking at the customer experience. Okay, go back and review your feedback and review your testimonials, see what people are saying about you on Google. And hopefully you're doing this on a regular basis because you're responding to those reviews anyway. But it's a good idea to go back and look at customer sentiment. Did our star rating go up in the last year, or did it go down from the year before that, and why, right? And I'll tell you that as you go through and start to look at that customer experience, you're going to identify opportunities to improve satisfaction, to improve retention, to improve the lifetime value of our customers. And that, frankly, winds up being one of the biggest opportunities from that previous SWOT analysis that I see most small plumbing, HVAC, remodeling contractors, home service contractors have right in their arsenal, is that we're not so big that we feel like a machine. We really have that ability to provide excellent customer care, excellent customer service, and do it better than the big boys out there. And so that's something else to really just consider as you're moving through this whole planning process. So once we've looked at our, kind of our financial and profitability review, we've looked at our lead generation and our marketing, we've gone through our SWOT analysis, we've looked at our operations. Now comes the part that we actually get to start having some fun, and that's really now dreaming, right? It's goal setting for the new year. The thing that I will say first and foremost when it comes to goal setting is that what I've noticed myself doing, what I notice a lot of my clients do as well, is that they'll come up with these BHAGs, right? These big, hairy, audacious goals. And that's wonderful. It's good to have those, and it's good to stretch yourself, right? The idea of if we shoot for the stars, we'll at least hit the moon, okay? But what I'm going to encourage you to do before you ever talk about revenue goals or profit goals or any of this is I want you to understand your why. Why does any of this matter in the first place? Why is it important for you to add another $1 million in revenue in the next year? And the deeper the why, the more gestalt, right? The more follow through, the more power you're going to have as you go out and try to pursue these goals. So I always, before I start talking financial goals or any other goals, it's really recrystallizing what's important to me. And so if my why is that I want to be able to serve 20% more customers than I did last year. And we want to be able to take a percentage of that profit and send it over to a group that's doing humanitarian work in Kenya. And we want to start an education program for journeyman plumbers to help them come right out of school or right out of high school and be able to, come in and learn a trade and make really, really good money. So the bigger the why, the bigger again, that motivation will be to really do that. So obviously then what we're going to do from a goal setting perspective as a first priority is we're going to be talking about revenue. We're going to be talking about our profit goals. And I really, really like SMART goals, right? Specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-based. Okay. So that's the SMART goal setting process. Once we've gone through and we've set those goals, we have some specificity around it. We've checked off all of those SMART checklist boxes. Now we want to set key performance indicators. How are we going to know if we're on track or off track? Okay. And if you think about it from a marketing revenue perspective, let's say that to hit $3 million a year, for the sake of argument, at an average ticket of $750, we're going to end up having to do about 300 calls per month, right? And if I know from my previous marketing activity, or from my previous marketing analysis rather, that my cost per lead is going to be, let's say $65 and my cost per acquisition is $120. Now I can start, and on average, right? Now what I can start to do is I can start to reverse engineer my goals, right? I can say, okay, are we hitting this, if I took 300 jobs, divided that by 4.6, right, which is the number of weeks there are in a month, then I can start to say, okay, we need to be going out on this many jobs every single week. But even before that, some of those KPIs might be that we need to be generating about 100 leads a week, or we need to be generating, about 75 conversions a week, right? And so the more specific we can get with those goals and tie those KPIs so that we know whether or not we're going up, down, or sideways, that's going to be a huge, huge deal. The other thing that I will say too is that once we've developed those KPIs, now we want to go set some milestones. Again, I really like to do this on a quarterly basis. Month to month is just so, you can have so many variables, but those start to really even out over a 3-month period. And so we want to break those goals into actionable quarterly steps, okay? We also want to look at our strategic initiatives. So we want to identify 2 to 3 major projects or changes for the year. And I really 3 is the max, guys. If it's big enough and it's really going to move the needle, you are not going to be able to see more than 2 or 3 initiatives realistically get done. And so that's kind of comes back again to that R part of that SMART goal setting, where we've got to be realistic about what we're trying to do. And then last but not least, we want to set up our contingency planning, right? So what happens if, I don't know, what happens if Google goes out of business as an example, right? Not likely, but there is a trend out there. And Gartner even reported on this recently, saying that by 2026, 25+% of search is no longer going to go to Google because of AI chatbots, right? So one of the things that I might want to understand then is, how are we going to pad against that? How are we going to optimize for AI, right? Because AI has become this huge, massive thing. And if Google's only going to be worth 75% of what they were a year ago in terms of the traffic they could send, how are we going to get leads from other sources? Okay. So having that contingency in place and understanding what our backup plans are is really just risk mitigation 101. Okay, so we've gone through this big planning process at this point. We've defined our goals. We've talked about KPIs. And then the next step in all of this is to now come together and start to bring our team into alignment. Before I get into that, though, I'm going to step back and say that depending on your situation, if you have an operations manager, if you have a shop manager, if you have a service manager, if you have a COO, if you have all of these different people on the bus, absolutely include them in their planning. Okay, this is not in that planning. This is not meant to be done in a vacuum. Okay. And the more feedback that you get, the more people that you involve in this process at that high level, the more creativity that's going to come out of this, because all things being equal, two minds are better than one, and five minds are better than two. So absolutely encourage you to involve your upper management team in this overall process. But once we've gotten that goal really crystallized, we understand where we want to go, we understand why we want to go there, and now we're ready to start putting this into action. The first step is to get your team on board. So I always recommend doing an annual team meeting and also quarterly team meetings as well. Okay. And that annual team meeting is really, it's about transparency, frankly. It's about buy-in. It's about getting your team on the bus. Okay. So we want to share our results from last year. And I absolutely encourage, to share, hey, here's what we did in revenue. We had our best year ever. We had our worst year ever. Be real with people, because people want to solve problems too. And if they're invested in you and your company, they're going to help support you in the execution of your goals. We want to celebrate wins. Okay. This is something that I hear quite a bit as I'm interviewing different HVAC and plumbing owners out there. But it's really about, hey, let's acknowledge people. Let's acknowledge our highest performers. Let's acknowledge our people who made the most progress, right? In terms of how much they were producing at the beginning of the year and where they wound up at the end of the year. Let's acknowledge our CSRs, and all the people who keep the trucks on the road and keep my management problems down to a very small minimum, right? And we really just want to outline what the vision is so that everybody understands where we're going and why, and can have the opportunity to buy in. Then from there, we want to get into individual goal setting with our team members. Okay. And this is that first part of, now we're talking, we've talked about the plan, we've talked about the vision. Now let's talk about where the rubber hits the road. Okay. And that's sitting down with literally each and every employee in my company and aligning their goals to the overall company goals so that they know how they're going to be measured, what is going to come up in their performance reviews. Okay. The more that you can get buy-in on this, the easier that flow is going to be, because you're just not going to get the resistance from people because they don't know what's going on. Clear communication is actually a really cool thing. Go figure. So sit down with your people, right? Get them lined up for the year. Ask them how they enjoyed the previous year, what they think that they could be working on from a personal growth perspective, what some of their personal weaknesses are, what their strengths are, what opportunities do they see for the business? Because man, we want to definitely talk with our executive team, but the real people who are in the trenches every single day with your clients and customers and can provide so much creative juice to this whole process are those CSRs. They're the plumbers that are going out and doing the service calls. So performance reviews then is something that is kind of the last piece of that. So we want to conduct reviews, really just assess gaps, in skills or resources so that we know how we're going to bring our people up. What training are we going to put into them? Maybe we want to send a couple of, our newer plumbers off to work with some other plumbing companies so that they can get some experience there. And, hey, we'll dish you out some free labor, right? But we want to know how we're going to measure our employees' performance. And we want to set up a system to where we're making sure that we're going to be sitting down with them once a quarter, reviewing those key performance indicators, correcting as necessary, and then always, always, always praising people, right? And that's something that I think just a lot of business owners miss. We don't necessarily need the validation, right? The validation shows up in the bank account, but if you can pat those people on the back and tell them that they're doing a damn good job and how much you appreciate them, that goes in a really, really long way. So that's kind of it on the team alignment and communication. And then I'd say really kind of the seventh step of this is really just more of a leadership reflection, a personal leadership reflection. We want to look at our leadership performance, okay? First and foremost, I want to look at me. And the thing that I've realized over the years is that usually if there's a roadblock, I'm it, okay? As much as I'm the one driving the bus and everything else, it's oftentimes my attitudes or my personal quirks or hangups or what I'm unwilling to do, the things that I very well need to be doing. And so doing that and turning that focus now back to me first and foremost as the owner of the company, as the CEO of the company, president, whatever that is going to just give me kind of an unbiased look of like, where can I improve as a leader? Where can I improve as a manager? what are some of the challenges that come up because of my leadership style? What are some of the big things that happen that are positive because of my leadership style, right? And maybe that came out, hopefully that came out in the SWOT section of this. But if not, that's definitely something to look at. Like, what are my strengths personally as a leader, as a, as the business owner? And then I want to really just identify areas that I want to try to personally grow in that coming year, right? And just like we talked about with the big major initiatives, these are only going to be two, maybe three things. Okay. If you've ever tried to change a habit, you know how hard it is to do that. And so if I go into the beginning of the year going, okay, I have a 20-point plan of everything that I'm going to overhaul when it comes to me and my leadership style, you're going to fail miserably. Okay. It's got to be simple. It's got to be sustained. And it might be something as simple as every time I'm in the office, I am going to offer praise and appreciation to at least three people. Okay. Keep it simple, right? The KISS method. Keep it simple, silly. So moving on then, we want to talk about work-life balance. Okay. And the big thing that I think we take for granted when it comes to being entrepreneurs is just how much stress we're under on a constant basis. And looking at, where can I reduce stress in my life? This is a big deal. It's a really big deal. Maybe it's taking a vacation a little more often, maybe it's taking Fridays off, whatever that is, really look at, man, what was my stress level like over the last year? And how can I bring this down? Because we don't often think about work-life balance as entrepreneurs because we're just, again, driven, focused, kind of perfectionistic, maybe a little workaholic people. And we push and we push and we push and we rarely stop to say, man, how's my life right now? So look at that, okay? Plan time off and really look at how am I going to take care of myself in the coming year so that I can keep showing up as that level 5 leader, right? So I can keep showing up for my staff, so I can keep showing up for my family if I have one, for myself, and stay healthy and stay in good spirits because, man, it's not worth it if you're constantly stressed out and lowering our life expectancy because we're not looking at these work-life balance issues. So really then to wrap all of this up, okay, we've gone through and taken this 7-step process. Now the big thing is we document the plan, okay, and it needs to be in a clear, actionable format. I really like EOS. It's the entrepreneurial operating system. It comes from the book Traction by Gino Wickman. And there's all sorts of free tools out there, but whatever system you use to document your goals and then make sure that you're reviewing your goals, any system is better than no system. Okay. Last but not least, we want to share that plan with all of our key stakeholders, our team, advisors. Have it somewhere that it's sitting on a wall. Can we, track that progress every single week and let your team see it? And in those weekly meetings, celebrate those successes, talk about where we're off, talk about where we're moving to, talk about the good things that are happening in that, but have that be a company-wide focus, if you will, on results. And then really the last piece of this is, of course, just to hold those next quarterly planning meetings where we're doing this same thing, but kind of in a smaller thing, right? We're not going to spend maybe hours and hours and hours doing our quarterly reviews like we would with our annual review, but we want to have those regular checkpoints that we have scheduled in, as well as what we know those KPIs should be if we hit our goals. And then it's just going to be a real easy comparison to like, are we on track? Are we off track? But more importantly, if we plan in those quarterly planning processes, then we're going to have regularly scheduled dates. And I definitely encourage you to schedule them out at the beginning of the year. Our Q1 review will be on this day. Our Q2 review will be on this day, right? And have them actually scheduled in and have all of your key stakeholders already on that calendar invite so that everybody knows on this Friday on, April 6th, right, of 2025, we are going to have the entire team cell phones off, in a room with all the data in front of us so that we can make that time the most effective time possible. So having those quarterly reviews is the thing that's going to help us know that we're on track, and having them scheduled in is going to give us that accountability to make sure that it actually happens. So just to kind of recap all of this, guys, financial and profitability review, especially look at the cash flow and the balance sheet and all those things that you tend to avoid anyway, right? Lead generation and marketing review, SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, operations review, goal setting for the new year. Okay. And then team alignment and communication. And then our seventh point again is looking at that personal and leadership reflection, and then making that all into a documented plan, sharing that plan with everybody. And most importantly, don't set goals and then put it on a shelf. Put it somewhere where you're going to see it every single day. Okay. What we focus on expands. And so the more I can keep focusing on my goals, the more they're going to really internalize into my being. And just that natural process of focusing on that on a regular basis will make those goals expand. It's going to dramatically increase the likelihood that I'm going to be able to achieve what I've set out to achieve. And it just needs to be right out there in front of me so I can kind of put the blinders on to everything else and say, this is what we're going to accomplish this year. And this is more importantly the why behind that, because of the why that we already figured out as part of this process. So again, if you'd like to go through this process with me, particularly the part around marketing, lead generation, we're going to be hosting that annual 2025 planning workshop on January the 15th. Again, that's 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific. You can visit our website at jobcalls.com for more information about that, or just feel free to reach out to me. You can email me anytime at adam@jobcalls.com. Reach out to me on LinkedIn, however you'd like to touch base, but I'd love to have you join us for that. We're going to be actually giving you the tools to go through and analyze what your cost per lead was for all of those different campaigns. We're going to be giving you the tools to know what's working now in the realm of SEO and Google Ads and Google LSA and Facebook advertising and CTV and all of these other different channels. And last but not least, we're going to be really helping you to crystallize in that plan and have that working document that displays our goals that I can stuck up on the wall like a big poster to let everybody know this is what we're going to do here in 2025. So I hope this has been helpful, friends. I've certainly enjoyed bringing kind of my planning process to you. I hope that you found this valuable. And again, I'm Adam Loveridge with Job Calls. This is the Home Services Marketing Growth to Acquisition podcast. And I look forward to catching you in the new year. Merry Christmas.